go ahead. And that's okay if you don't. And if you want to type in the chat too, that's fine. Gail, so what are some things that you've learned though over the time that you've been working and working on the projects?
Well, one of the things we've learned is maybe some of the plants that we chose don't really give an indication of the impact with climate change unless we specifically target some more, I think, deciduous plants. I don't know if Erin would agree with me on that. We do have a lot of plants, but these are the ones that I really record. So I guess that would be my suggestion is if you're and you really want to get some good data, I think having more deciduous plants probably in your locations would be helpful.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that a lot of the sites that you're observing at have a lot of management happening at them. So like you were saying with the Chinese tallow, there's a lot of cutting back of trees, and there's also a lot of prescribed fire along the Gulf Coast too. So I think that has impacted, what we're seeing with the phenology in a couple of the different species. But when you use just like the activity curve to plot that, it's hard to know that that's why we're seeing the patterns we're seeing. So that's something that I feel like we're thinking about with this, the data analysis project we're working on, is how do you bring in that context about what's actually happening at the site, that you local phenology leaders are like the ones that know what's happening. That's the reason why things are going on with the phenology data. So how do we make sure that we don't lose track of all that stuff? And yeah, help you kind of like bring that into your analysis when you're looking at the data.
Right, and we have written 5 reports now. So that is, I think they're all located on our homepage, the Gulf Coast Phenology webpage, which is I think is it kind of hosted by the National Fish and Wildlife Service, isn't it, Erin? And of course you
yeah. So that, yeah, we actually have a special partnership with the Fish and Wildlife Service. And so this project, the Gulf Coast Phenology Trail, is part of that effort. So we have a US FWS Phenology Network website that I'll link to. That's where the Gulf Coast Phenology Trail landing page is. And because of our partnership with Fish and Wildlife, we were able to create these cool interactive dashboards that bring in a lot of the tools from the Viz tool, but they allow the refuge managers and other administrators like Gail to decide like what they want to display on their landing page. So you can check that out. It kind of takes a second to load, but if you scroll down on that page, it's really interesting to be able to see the kind of graphs and things like Gail had showed an example of. And this is something that we're hoping to bring to all of our local phenology programs in the future. So we are working on a new website right now, and it won't be immediately, but I think in the next year or so, we really want to bring in this kind of functionality for you all as well. So that's something to look forward to, is the ability to have your own graphs and stuff from the Viz tool just be right on your profile page and be able to show people what you're finding with your data. I'll also link to the annual report from last year.
I did get a question about volunteers, and of course, we were having several training sessions a year, maybe 2 or 3, and we get a lot of people who would participate, and some would, just like any volunteer program, you get some that are going to stay, they'll cycle in, they'll go do other volunteer activities. But I think I look at that as a plus in many ways, that you're getting more information out and more people are learning about it. They may not just stay with the program, but they're learning how to go look and use a program, how to use an app, to go out and look at plants. Maybe they wouldn't have done that before without some kind of training. So I still think it's good. It's good to just get to meet new people and participate with them.
And did you see that question that popped up too from Elizabeth?
Right. Is it easy or hard? Circumstances right now are kind of difficult. We're going to have an online training session with master naturalists. That has not worked, but we are planning to get one at this next month, actually in August, with some folks locally. So we keep kind of, we go out to like festivals, we'll keep a list who was interested, and we try to stay in touch with them to see if they might want to participate. So yeah, you're right. It's not always easy to go out and recruit, but people seem to, initially enjoy it.
And yes, Master Naturalists is, that program is great, especially if you have that organization in your area. Being able to reach out to them too and let them know about your program is a really great way to be able to find some volunteers. But yeah, they're fantastic.
Hi, Henry. I saw that you asked how were the 4 focal plants chosen, plus the Chinese towel. I think it's because the early folks were, these plants would probably be in all locations. So they wanted to be able, because, we had so many sites that wanted to participate. They thought, well, this plant will probably be in all these places.
And Gail, I'm just curious too, what are some strategies that you guys use for communication between so many different sites to make sure that like you're all on the same page, or if someone is having struggles, like what are ways that y'all maintain communication?
Well, that's a good question. We try to have some information on our Facebook page, and then just making calls, not a lot of calls, and just if people have questions, they usually try to reach out to me as well.
And Gail, I feel like you also do a lot of traveling around to do like in-person meetings with a lot of the observers too, to kind of like check in and have that face-to-face time, which I think has really helped.
You're right, Erin. That's been something I've enjoyed doing, and going out to the site, especially in the kind of the eastern areas of this Mississippi and Alabama, and then getting to go to New Orleans is not something I do often, but something that have fun. Now I have to tell you, we have had a lot of tropical weather and hurricanes. Some of our locations have been shut down, and they have to do work to restore that area, and then they come back online. So we do have some pauses. We do have some issues with that, with weather, but that's part of life here on the Gulf Coast.
Yeah. Besides like having to deal with, the storms, what are some challenges that you guys have faced over the years? And what are some ways that you've overcome those? Either with like volunteers, I mean, besides COVID and everything, but anything unique that you think other programs may face?
I think we kind of touched on a lot of them already. The volunteers kind of cycling in, getting training, and then they go on to other positions. And with the weather and just having to wait for things to come back online. I think part of it too is just being with this program for so many years now, that plants die and then you've got to get a replacement. And, I've had some pretty large plants that have just, for whatever reason, they have passed, if that's the right word, but you feel kind of responsible for them. So, you just have to go out and find replacements. And that's the only thing I can say is make sure that you pick a lot of plants of the same species. So in case 1 or 2 die, then you've got some backup, and then you find more.
Yeah, Gail, can you talk a little bit about your experience working with the middle schoolers too at the Mississippi Sandhill Crane?
Right. We are lucky in Ocean Springs to have a site located next to a middle school, Ocean Springs Middle School. So we had a very interested teacher, an 8th grade teacher, who had kind of a pretty sharp group of students. And we got together and picked a way that they could walk over, go in the trail. We would divide the group into 4 different groups. I put different colored flags on plants. So this group would go to that location that week, and then they kind of rotate for a week, every week. So, that was one of our really neat things doing here. And then of course COVID. So kind of need to get that back on track. but I heard a lot of good things from the students. They really enjoyed doing that. First, they were out of school, and then they could see something real. So they could go out and just look at plants, and we look for birds. So that was one of our really good initial projects with younger students. We have a university in Long Beach, one of their campuses, and we do have students who are monitoring plants there. So older, but they're very involved in the monitoring of that. I've taught a couple of sessions at the community college with students, and they've been involved. So I really like getting younger people, a lot of people who are volunteering kind of look like me and my age. So we want to get younger people involved as much as we can.
I just want to make sure no one else had a question in particular. But also, if you guys who have your own programs have encountered any questions or any challenges, and anything you want to have a conversation about that is happening at your site that you might want some guidance or advice on, right now is a really great time to be able to do that as well. And especially I like that because it's monthly calls, because as we know, month to month, like something crazy could happen, and it's just like, how do I deal with this? So if any of you have any of those questions, like you can go ahead and mention in the chat that you want to ask something, or you can unmute and bring it up, and that's totally fine.
Well, may I start with a question? A lot of our volunteers want to have something to write down. So when they're using Nature's Notebook and they use that little comment, but then going back and locating the comments and seeing if there's something that we can use. And I think, Erin, you've addressed that this is something that you all are working on right now. So could you comment any more on that?
Yeah, so when you make a comment, typically you do that at the level of the individual plant, right? So if you're on the app, especially, you're putting in your yes and no and intensity data, there's a little field at the bottom, and you can say like, I saw insect damage on this plant today, or whatever you want to say about the plant. We also more recently added a comment at the level of the site. So if there's something you want to say about, a lot of people want to comment on the weather, like raining really hard today, or rained yesterday, it's really muddy. You can do that as well. But then, yeah, once you submit those comments, it's not as easy to find out where they are or see them. Really, the only place you can see the comments, you can't see them in the Viz tool, of course, but in the place where you can download the data, which is the Phenology Observation Portal, which I can link, there is a section on there when you're downloading a data file. Well, first off, there's the partner group section. That's where you should go to make sure you get just your group's data. But there's also some optional fields, and that is where you can find the comments field. So if you want to download a data file, make sure you select comments from that optional list, and then you can get the comments alongside your data and see everything that people have said. So yeah, it's there if you want to see it. I think there's more we could do to give more space to kind of like incorporate that kind of contextual information. So I mentioned our data analysis guidance project that we've started. That is really an effort to create a series of modules on our learning site that will walk you through the process of how do you really dig in and look at your data and understand things and try to answer the questions that you have. So we'll definitely have some information in there about how to get to those comments, so you can make sure you include those there. So we'll have all that in some modules that we're going to start this fall.
And then Elizabeth, do you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question?
Sure, yeah. So I know that we're sort of breaking ground a little bit with one of the newer added species to NPN with Thalastra spiculatus. And we have a couple of individual plants that are, so that is Asiatic bittersweet, which is a vine. And it, at one of our sites, there are a couple of the plants that we're monitoring that are fairly high up, 15, 20 feet up the tree that they're climbing. And monitoring the flower and fruit intensity has been really tricky for our observers there. But then also one of the other species we're monitoring, Rhamnus cathartica, common buckthorn, can present, so it's a shrub, but it can present as a tree. And we have a couple of individual plants that are, I'd say at least 15 feet tall, in and amongst other plants growing in the forest. And again, like getting a good read on the flower or fruit intensity, especially when you have overlapping phases with flower buds and open flowers, or fruit and ripe fruit. It's been really tricky. And this is the first year of our project. And so our default has mostly been, if you can't get a good estimate, just don't record an intensity. But I was wondering if there are other tricks of the trade or things like that that I could be sharing with our observers.
I think that just like taking a representative area and then just multiplying it by going up the tree is pretty much the only way that you can do it. I mean, you might see more flowering fruits up higher, but still, I think that's the only scientific way I know that you can do it.
Awesome. Thank you, Nanette.
Yeah, that's a great tip. And we actually have a new module in our observer certification course that's all about helping to estimate intensity that we're going to hopefully send out next week in an e-blast. So look out for that. But yeah, that's one of the tips we offer is try to find a smaller section that you can count and then multiply across the plant.
Awesome.
But I think just keep in mind too that, you're really trying to identify the peak in when that thing is happening. So if you're off by a bin, that's okay. I wouldn't stress out too much about that. And I try to just like rule out the bins first that I know it's definitely not. So, you can throw out probably if it's a lot, you can throw out the bottom too. And then you're just trying to pinpoint, well, is it under 1,000? Is it above 1,000? That hopefully should make it a little bit easier, but definitely willing to, you can leave that off or, it's all optional. So you can skip those until you feel comfortable.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm looking forward to taking that module.
Yeah, we're excited to be able to offer it. And we've been working on it for a while and I'm really excited about it. And then another suggestion I would have too is if you have access to binoculars, just bring some binoculars as well. Like if you're really like, I really think the ones at the top are ripe and these ones aren't. Yeah, just having a pair, even though it feels weird to me, I'm a birder, so to look at plants, but it does work.
Well, it's funny because most of our observers are also birders, so we all have our binoculars with us anyway. That's what we've been doing. But I really appreciate Nanette's suggestion of doing the like chunking it up and sectioning it. And we've been doing that for some of our individual plants. It's easier to do in some places where they're interspersed in the lower canopy. It's a little harder, but I like in those instances I would probably default then to Erin's ideas about like crossing off what it's not and working towards what it is. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great question. And then Henry, go ahead. You said you have a question too.
Yeah, so my question is about monitoring patches. Basically, yeah, I'm monitoring coyote brush, which is a shrub, and sometimes this shrub, like it can be hard to tell what an individual is and what is not, especially I think probably for people who are less familiar. So I wanted to do it as a patch. And so the way I conceived it was like, I was like, okay, here's a central plant, and then like 5 meters radius from the plant, that'll be the patch. But I've gone out a couple times and I've realized that one, if you're not really familiar with what 5 meters is, it can be hard, especially since like you can sort of pace your and walk 5 meters, that's great, but then you can't walk 5 meters into the brush, really, like that's kind of impossible. or it's also like there's poison oak. So it's not only impossible, it's also a bad idea. And also the passes, when I do it that way, there be not uniform in how much of the patch is occupied by the plant that's being monitored. So then when I'm doing percentages, that's maybe not so much of a problem, but a lot of the intensity is based on the number. And so then then I'm getting inconsistent data in a way. And so I'm wondering if there are guidelines about sort of how to set up patches. I was thinking like maybe instead of doing a radius, I could do like a straight line along the trail. Yeah, so any advice on that?
So one tool that might help, do you guys use the app, the Nature's Notebook app?
I'm currently, I created a data sheet and I'm doing it in the field or
Okay.
on the computer. Yeah.
Yeah, so you might, if you could take like a picture of like what you're trying to encompass. I don't know if there's any like physical landmarks that would help, but if you have a picture and then if you could put that in your data sheet packet and people can use that as a reference, that can kind of help people to line up what am I supposed to observe. And the app actually lets you upload a single picture for each plant or patch. So if you were using the app, you could also like reference that on your phone and look at it before you make the observation. And try to like line it up that way. But yeah, I don't know about other tips for delineation. You could, if you had like little flags, are you able to put any sort of flags up? You could like flag the ends of the line that kind of delineate your section, or put it at the four corners, maybe little flags or flagging tape.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Thanks.
That was what I was thinking as well, is like some sort of flagging tape or something like that, just so that it's like, yeah, clearly marked for them. Be a good way to do it.
Yeah, I like that. And I like the idea of putting in a picture and then maybe I can like sort of draw a line too. So that's another way to see it. Yeah. Thanks.
Do you have did you make any photo guides for your site by any chance too? Because that's another way to do it, is like and even if it's not like one of the photo guides that like it's all submitted and all that, you can still like make photo guides for your site of like each of your individual plants as well. And yeah, if it's in the packet.
I just have the photos of the central plants right now, but I
Yeah.
haven't done the overview. So that's what I can work on. I think it's a good idea. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for great questions, you guys. Thank you. We appreciate it. See if anyone else wants to pop up or anything. And that's all right. Oh, yep. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we appreciate being able to do this. We appreciate you guys coming and participating and all the work that you do at your sites. And I know some of you have newer sites, so I hope they're going along well. I'm really excited for when we see your annual reports to see how kind of the first year has gone for you guys. So, but yeah, it's great having you here. Thank you so much, Gail, for coming and talking to us about your program. I think that was really interesting and really informative. And we really appreciate, the knowledge you bring to the table.
Well, thank you for having me today.
All right. Well, I'll let y'all go a few minutes early then. Thank you all so much again, and I'll see you guys next month. Have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your summer.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care, you
Thanks.
guys.
Good afternoon.